We're live. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Good to have you here. Kathy, can you confirm, please? Thank you very much. Yes. All right, maybe not today. Thank you, everybody, for joining on this October 7th, 2026, I think. I don't know what year it is. What the heck year is it, anyway? It's getting cold outside in the northeast of the United States where I happen to live. I like it. I enjoy it. I went for a walk this morning. It was brisk. It was refreshing. In the summer, when I go for a walk or sometimes go for a run, I actually prefer walking because it's more relaxing. It's so hot and sticky. I really don't like it. But when the weather is cool or even cold, that's fine with me. That's great. I know I've talked about that plenty, but I like cold weather. I like winter. I like autumn. All good. I like spring. And summer is my least favorite season by far. Today we're going to be talking about a couple things. There's something in the news I want to go over because it does relate to some language that I want to talk about. We're going to kind of use that as our linguistic theme for the day. We're going to talk about English words and phrases related to that stuff. You'll see what I mean once we get into it, and talk about some phrasal verbs, of course, and of course, answer your English questions. So if you have questions about words, phrases, grammar, pronunciation, culture, what is that on my hand, or anything else, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer. We might take a look at Reddit. We might watch one or two videos. It should be pretty entertaining, hopefully enjoyable. If you haven't already done so, sincerely would appreciate if you could hit the like button. That supports the channel a lot. It's a very small action you can take, which has a very big impact on what YouTube does with everything. If you do that, then YouTube is more likely to show it to other people, which is obviously good. Feel free to subscribe as well. And if you haven't already done so, you can take my free course. That's in the links in the description. You can check out my other courses too. I recently launched a travel course, which is going very well. The travel course already has a lot of students and is getting really good reviews. So far, I think 4.8 average out of 5 star reviews. It's going really well. People are enjoying it. Check that out too. That's not free, but it's 12 hours long, so reasonably so, I think. All right, so that's the introduction stuff, and I think we'll just get right into it after I have a little coffee. This is my first coffee of the day, which is very late for me to be having my first coffee of the day, but it is what it is. I have an espresso machine at home, so I usually make one of two different types. I have two different machines. One is called a Keurig, and the other is called a... I'll show you what I have. There's a popular way to make coffee here called Keurig, and it looks like this. Let me show you what it looks like. Looks like this. The nice thing about it, to be honest, is that it's very convenient, you know. I think the one I have is... I have either this one or this one. Anyway, you put a little cup. There's a little coffee cup called a K-cup, which has the coffee in it. You put that in, and then you pull the lever down, and you push a button, and it makes you a nice cup of coffee. That one's nice and small. That one's kind of cute. I think mine is this one here. I think that's the one I have. And that's one way to do it. But I also sometimes use a French press. And this is an interesting way to make coffee. It's a very simple way to make coffee. You essentially are making tea with coffee beans and straining out the coffee grounds, the little pieces, with a sort of metal mesh, this little metal mesh that keeps all the coffee grounds at the bottom. The advantage of the French press is that you get a very rich flavor. With a lot of other coffees, you have a filter that removes a lot of the taste, and with the French press, you get a lot of oils from the coffee beans, which adds flavor. So that's good. I've tried to use this one before, this thing here, and I don't like it. I maybe I just don't know how to use it. It's called the mocha pot. The mocha pot I have tried and tried and tried, and I just can't make a good cup of coffee with that. And it's too much work. It's too pass. And then the other way to do it is the one that this particular cup of coffee here is made with an espresso machine. Espresso, not espresso. Thank you very much. And the one I have is a Breville. It's called a Breville. Oh, Breville, not Bevel. Breville. Is this how you spell it? Breville. Breville coffee machine. And it's the one with the screen. So it's, I think, one of these. I think it's this one. And then it makes really good coffee. It's amazing. It makes very tasty coffee. And so I like to use it as often as possible. You buy, instead of grounds or anything, you buy straight beans, coffee beans. And then you grind the beans. There's a grinder built into the machine. You tamp the coffee into what is it called? What are those things? We used to work at a coffee shop. I could know this. I should know what that's called. What is it called? I forget. The handle thing. I used to work at a coffee shop. When I was 21, I worked at a coffee shop in Seattle. Can't remember. Anyway, you tamp the coffee into that, then you lock it in place, and the coffee then pours out into the cup, and you can make a latte that way, or you can make an Americano that way. A lot of people, I think, don't realize that it's all espresso, all of the coffee drinks you would order at a coffee shop, and the only difference would be which things you add or don't add. So a doppio would be just 2 shots of espresso. An Americano is usually 2 shots of espresso, like that here that you see in that little cup there, with hot water added. A latte is hot milk and a little bit of milk foam on top. A cappuccino is, the only difference between a latte and a cappuccino is that there's more foam. So maybe instead of that much milk foam, there's that much milk foam. That's the only difference. A lot of the drinks are just all the same thing, basically, with a few minor tweaks. Karina says, where's the other one? Yeah, there is only one today, believe it or not, which is crazy. I know. There's only one. I think that's the one that I use. It's got a steam wand, so you can steam milk with it as well. Okay. Well, as I said, it looks like more people are joining, so that's great. I welcome your questions if you have them, but I do want to get into the main topic of today. Hey, Vassal. I've been off the radar recently. Sorry to hear it. I've been doing live streams every Wednesday and Friday. We do these every Wednesday and Friday at around noon Eastern Standard Time without fail. And I've skipped one since June, but I don't plan on skipping any more unless there's something horrific happening. One interesting thing that's going on is my father will be visiting it's around his birthday. I think his birthday is tomorrow, but that's not why he's visiting. He's just visiting because we haven't seen him in a while. The last time I saw him was about a year ago. I went on a road trip, so it was myself and Mushroom. If you don't know who Mushroom is my wife, and then my father, and we went on a road trip in the Southwest through Utah, Arizona, and up into Wyoming. We went through we went through Yellowstone National Park, which was crazy, which was absolutely amazing. And we did that together, and now he lives in Florida. He's coming up to visit. He hasn't seen my house yet, so he wants to see it. Last time he visited, I was still in an apartment in Queens. Now I'm in a house that we just finished building, as most of you, maybe many of you know. And so he's gonna be staying with us for a couple days. So that's nice. That's what I'll be doing over the weekend. But I'd like to hear what you guys have planned for the weekend. Cuba here. That's a place I really want to visit. I really want to visit Cuba. It's definitely on my list. So, what's the main topic for today? Why the thumbnail? Let's talk about it. And it's going to provide us a theme, I think, for today. Especially on Fridays, I like to have a general theme, something that maybe comes from the news. We might not always do that, but I think it's useful today because it's language that's out there, right? And I think it's useful to know, and it also helps tie in culturally to issues going on in the United States. So, as maybe you know, there has been in the United States something called the war on drugs. And this started, I believe, in the 1970s, where anything that could be called a drug or could be very addictive was classified as a criminal narcotic, right? That means something that if you have it with you, you could get arrested for, right? And included in that, a bunch of things: cocaine, LSD, heroin, meth, marijuana, psilocybin mushrooms, all kinds of stuff. Not coffee, thankfully, right? There is a history of this in the United States, of getting rid of or banning certain substances. It happened during a period called Prohibition, when alcohol was actually made illegal. And this led to the rise of the gangster and people like Al Capone illegally distributing alcohol during that period of time in the 1920s. And when did that end? Maybe early 1930s, I think. I'm not sure about the dates there. So anyway, this war on drugs thing has been going on for the last 50 years, and it's resulted in a lot of people going to prison for not selling drugs or distributing drugs, but for just having it. In other words, while if you were, let's say you were selling weed, marijuana, okay, you're selling that, you could go to jail, and your sentence, which is how long you go to jail, might be longer than if you were just caught with smoking some, but you'd both be arrested and you'd both go to jail. But this is changing a lot. For example, in New York, where I live, you can buy it. It's fine. It's decriminalized. It hasn't officially been made legal, but it's decriminalized, meaning you could smoke a joint of this. We're talking about marijuana here, right in front of a police officer, and they don't care. It's totally decriminalized. So that's, I think, great, but still you have two levels in the United States government. You have the state level and the national level. So with a lot of things, there will be state level rules that will start to change. The states can make their own laws within some limits. And so the first state to do this, I believe, was California. Had a medical marijuana law. So if you needed it for a medical purpose, it helps with joint pain and sleeping, things like that, you could get a special card that would allow you to have it and use it for medical purposes, right? Or some states started to just completely make it legal. You could go to the store and buy it. I believe Colorado was the first state to do that. And from there, it started to spread. And for example, in California, it's totally legal. In New York State, it's, as I said, decriminalized, meaning you can't get arrested unless you have more than a certain amount. And I believe it's a pretty large amount, like a bag this big maybe. So good, because the problem is, if you're just caught with that, then you might go to jail for a long time, which is going to completely mess up your life. And also, the criminal justice system wasn't treating everyone fairly, so that, for example, black people were much more likely to end up in jail than white people for exactly the same crime, having marijuana. So this all leads up to something that happened yesterday, which is Joe Biden announced that the people who had simple possession, that means they're not selling it or anything, they have been pardoned. That means, for example, if they had that on their record, that would be a crime. And if you're going to an employer to try to get a job, they would say, why do you have a criminal record? That would be then wiped away, completely pardoned. So this is one step in further making drugs like marijuana and perhaps some others legal to use. And so it's very interesting. And then he also asked for the people who decide where it fits in the whole sort of list of drugs, he asked them to make it a less serious one. This is something we'll talk about later, but there's something called a schedule. And a Schedule 1 drug is the most serious ones. And marijuana is on the same level as the worst ones. It's on the same level as cocaine, for example. Well, are those even similar? Most people would say, no, they're not even similar. So they're very different types of things, right? One is highly addictive and one is often used for medical reasons, right? So anyway, I want to watch the video of him announcing the pardon, and then we can talk about it a little bit more. Again, I'm not an expert on this, okay? I'm by no means an expert, but this is, I think, a very interesting thing, and I think it sheds some light on the whole story of drugs in the United States, which is, I think, very interesting. Okay, so let's watch Joe Biden stumble through this statement.
President, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's already legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, to educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences. While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted.
White, black, and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, but black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted
at disproportionately higher rates. So
higher
today,
rates.
I'm taking 3 steps to end this failed approach. First,
3 steps.
I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana.
All prior means previous, so all prior federal means not on the state level, federal means on the national level, offenses. So if they had simple possession of marijuana, he's saying, whoop, it's wiped away, it's gone.
There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result of that conviction. My pardon will remove this burden on them. Second.
Just a small point here, but why does it always look like the sun is in his eyes? Second.
I'm calling on all governors to do the same for state marijuana possession offenses. Third, the federal government currently classifies marijuana as a Schedule 1 substance.
Schedule 1. We'll look at that next, but that is an interesting thing. Schedule 1 is the highest level.
The same as heroin and LSD, and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense. So I'm asking the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate a process to review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law.
So he can't actually change the way that it's scheduled. All he can do is ask the people who make those decisions to review it and look at it. And of course they will. He's the president, so they're going to look at it because that's what he told them to do. He can't actually be the one to say, we're going to change how it's scheduled.
Even as federal and local regulations of marijuana change, important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales should stay in place. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
Upended means too many lives have been upset. So maybe too many people have gone to jail or not been able to get education opportunities or not been able to get a job because they had this thing on their record, and it's pretty crazy. So I want to go over some expressions too. We're going to go over some idioms and expressions today as well. But I thought this was an interesting story, and wanted to talk about it a little bit first. So the way that drugs are scheduled depends on the type that they are, and this is from, it's called adf.org.au, and this doesn't have the scheduling, but it does give you a sense of all of the different types. So let's zoom in a little bit here. So you have a category of cannabinoids, which includes marijuana, hash oil, cannabis, and then you have dissociatives, which would include ketamine, nitrous oxide, which is, I feel like that's popular with teens for some reason. Empathogens, which include MDMA and ethylone, which I haven't actually heard of before. And then stimulants, which include caffeine. So, I mean, coffee is a drug, right? Caffeine is a drug. It's just so common that you wouldn't be able to ban it, right? And it's not that harmful, so it's not banned or regulated. But it's on the wheel. Cocaine, betel nut, khat, I don't know that one, and nicotine, which would be what's in cigarettes. Then depressants, kava, benzodiazepines, and alcohol. So alcohol would be a depressant. Opioids, those are the famous bad ones, the ones that are really addictive, the opioids. Codeine, fentanyl, heroin, methadone, opium, and oxycodone. I don't know that one. And then another category called psychedelics, which includes LSD, which he mentioned, DMT, and psilocybin, as well as ayahuasca. Psilocybin would be magic mushrooms, and DMT is a synthetic one that is very fast acting. LSD was developed in the 1950s, I believe, and ayahuasca is a South American psychedelic. These are also often called hallucinogenic drugs. They create visions and hallucinations and make people often have spiritual experiences. My opinion is, he mentioned LSD, right? But people, so the reason that these are banned is because they're extremely addictive and they're really bad for you. If you're a heroin addict and you can't get off of it, you're very likely to die. A lot of people who get addicted to it do, right? But these are not addictive. Ayahuasca, LSD, psilocybin, they're not addictive. People may do them 4 times in their lives, and often they help people get off of addictions because they have a profound spiritual experience. So these are becoming popular, and also these are getting closer to becoming unbanned. Some universities are studying mushrooms for people with depression and PTSD, and there are centers in South America where you can take ayahuasca, and people report having very powerful spiritual experiences from those. So I don't think that these should be under the Schedule 1 either. That seems pretty crazy to me. But I can understand why these would be, because they're so harmful and so addictive. So I hear. I wouldn't know obviously from firsthand experience. So anyway, that's what's happening, and that's what that means. The announcement. You might wonder, can the president just do things like that? Yeah, there are things that presidents can just suddenly do. They're called usually executive orders, and the president can. It's kind of like snapping your fingers and saying, that's what we're going to do. Now, there's some things the president can't do. You have 3 branches of government: the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. The legislative is in charge of making and passing laws, and in order to do that, they have to vote on things, and there's a long process, and that would be Congress. And then the judicial branch is the Supreme Court, and then the executive branch is the president and his cabinet. So we have 3 branches, and each one has limitations, things they can and things they cannot do. But yeah. One thing that's interesting is about Joe Biden. I don't know if I have super strong political opinions anymore, but he does make a lot of goofs. He's very elderly. It's amazing to me that we have that the United States has a president who's so old.
Been done. If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, we're going to get a lot done.
Biden gaffes are sort of mistakes.
Cicadas. I just got one. Got me.
Sleepy Joe. Hey. Oh no. I don't know. All right. So I want to actually get into some language stuff now that we've covered that as a kind of foundation. And again, if you have any questions or things you're curious about, feel free to ask. But I want to actually want to get into some common expressions around this stuff. Not only drugs, but addiction in general. The way that we talk about addiction, and the way that we talk about what happens when we feel like we can't stop doing something. So we're going to do some stuff over on the blackboard. And again, if you haven't already done so, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. That's a small thing you can do, which helps out the channel quite a lot. I would really appreciate that. That is a big help. A tiny little thing which makes a very big difference. Okay. So how do we express that we can't stop doing something, that we're addicted to something, whether it's video games or shopping or snacks or drugs or whatever? How do we talk about that whole experience of trying to stop doing that and feeling that we're stuck inside of that, right? Well, we're just going to go over some common language that we can use in that sort of situation. Now, a common word that you will hear is hooked. And it makes sense, right? But this can be used in both a positive and a negative way. So what is a hook? A hook is something like that you would use to catch a fish, right? And if you imagine a fish being caught by the mouth, we can sort of use that as a visual to express the feeling of I can't stop doing this. It's like I'm caught by the mouth with a hook, right? Again, whether it's shopping or coffee or snacks, you can say then on after it to describe what it is. I'm kind of hooked on shopping, let's say. But I did mention that we could use this in not necessarily a negative way. Well, there was a program, I don't know if it's still going on, but hooked on phonics. Phonics being a way of teaching the phonetics of a language. It was a sort of educational program. I don't know if it still exists. But that's a way to say I can't stop doing that, but that's a good thing. That's an educational thing, right? If someone says I'm hooked on exercise, I'm hooked on exercise. Well, is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily. I am absolutely hooked on this novel. So it could be something very specific. A novel you're reading, you feel like you can't stop reading it. So it's okay to say that you're hooked on that novel, and that doesn't necessarily have the negative connotation that, for example, being hooked on shopping might have, or hooked on snacks might have. Okay, so it can be used either way depending on what it is that you're hooked on. It's usually not a bad thing to say that you're hooked on that you're hooked on exercise. But then when we talk about our intention to stop that, then we're talking usually about things that have a negative influence on us. And we say often the phrase, I'm trying to quit. This is the process of maybe I want to stop doing this, but I don't know how to do it, and I'm in the middle of this process. Okay, so for example, it's cigarettes. You smoke a pack a day. Day 1, you smoke half a pack a day. Day 2, you smoke 3 cigarettes. Day 5, you smoke 1 cigarette a day. So this would be a way to slowly quit, and the process of doing it is trying, right? If someone, though, says, I've been trying to quit smoking, I've been trying to quit smoking, that suggests, it gives a connotation that they're kind of failing, right? They've tried a few times. They tried different ways, slowly quitting, and maybe they tried cold turkey. So cold turkey would be to suddenly stop doing something. That is one method for kicking. Oh, I don't want the N. For kicking a bad habit. How do you quit a bad habit? How do you kick a bad habit? Kick and quit means the same thing. Kick feels a little more natural, a little bit maybe more casual. I do it cold turkey. I wanted to quit drinking coffee. I just stopped. I wanted to quit smoking. I just stopped. I wanted to quit my heroin addiction. I just stopped. Cold turkey. It was very difficult, but it was effective because I did it very suddenly. Okay? We could also say that we have, when we're doing this, why is it hard to quit? Well, we have a dependence. Now, a dependence is a feeling that we need it in order to function properly. I would say, to be totally honest with you, I have a dependence on coffee. Now, there are different types of dependencies. You might have a psychological dependence. You might have a chemical dependence. A chemical dependence would be your body actually does need it in order for you to feel okay. And a psychological one would be you're just used to it. You're in the habit of it, right? So if you have a dependence on coffee, maybe you feel a craving for coffee every day that you don't drink it because you're so used to doing it. But if you have a chemical dependence on coffee, maybe you actually get a physical headache. If I don't drink coffee tomorrow morning, I will get a very bad headache. So I know that I have a major dependence on coffee. But I have no plans to kick the habit because from what I can tell, coffee is not that unhealthy as far as I know, right? Another way we can talk about stopping this, you might say to get off. To get off it. I want to get off cigarettes, and often instead of saying the activity, we'll actually use the thing there. I want to get off cigarettes. I want to get off drugs. I want to get off video games if you're addicted to video games. For some reason, get off shopping doesn't sound quite right to me, and I'm not. Well, I guess that would be the activity, so maybe that's the reason, but quitting shopping cold turkey doesn't really make sense as a phrase because you have to buy stuff, you have to shop. And so quitting that would mean not buying anything. So it's a little fuzzier when it comes to shopping. Okay, now, how do we describe this terrible loop? Often we describe this sort of thing as a circle, right? Where you stop doing something and then you feel miserable, and maybe because you feel miserable, you start doing it again. This is what an addict will describe. Maybe a drug addict, for example, might describe, or maybe a smoking addict will describe. There's this thing where once I stop, that makes me want it more, or once I stop, that causes problems in my life that leads to depression, and that makes me want to go back to it. And this happens quite often with especially drug addiction, where someone might be totally addicted to a very harmful drug, and because of that, they lose their job. And because they lose their job, they feel depressed. And because they feel depressed, they do more of the drug. But because they do more of that, then they need money. And because they need money, they maybe do something illegal to get it. And to get that, they need it. So it keeps going around. This is called a vicious cycle. And sometimes it's used as circle. Vicious suggests that as it goes around, it kind of gets worse and worse, and it's kind of unending, never-ending, because it goes around and around all the time. Sometimes, if this leads to death or prison or something really terrible, we might describe it as a downward spiral. What's the difference between a vicious cycle and a downward spiral? The vicious cycle focuses on this sort of feedback loop of this thing leads to more things, which leads to more things, which leads back to this thing, right? And the downward spiral is this sort of feeling of, being flushed down a toilet, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's going actually downward and worse and worse and worse. And you can use downward spiral for more types of things. You might use downward spiral to talk about the failure of a business or the economy. You might use downward spiral to talk about maybe bad relationships between family members, things just getting worse and worse in that way. Or someone's life, maybe one thing starts and then leads to another bad thing and another. That is a downward spiral. So these phrases are common for talking about things we feel like we can't quit. And then once we start to get out of it, we might use something like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That would be you're walking through a dark tunnel and you see a pinprick of light. And hopefully it's not a train. Hopefully it's the end of the tunnel. That is another expression or another way to say it. Sometimes people say, I saw a light at the end of the tunnel and it was a train coming toward me. But hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is the end of whatever you want to stop. You're playing 6 hours of video games a day. You want to quit. You are able to slowly reduce it, manage it, and you see a light at the end of the tunnel, meaning maybe building better habits to not have that problem, to not have that addictive personality about video games or whatever you're addicted to. So, if you have any questions about this, let me know. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also, feel free to check out my full courses in the links in the description. Is sports an addiction? That's an interesting one. I wonder. So I wonder if people who. So addiction is a tough one because the word addiction has a negative connotation to it automatically, right? But for example, with my coffee addiction, I kind of feel okay with it. I don't even have any plans to stop drinking coffee every day. It's an addiction that I kind of like, right? And it doesn't have any negative consequences for me. It gives me energy in the morning and doesn't prevent me from sleeping. So I'm addicted to it, and we can call it an addiction because if I don't do it, there will be a negative consequence. I will get a headache. It's not the worst thing in the world, right? So that is my addiction. I think then the thing that makes it that would be that there's some thing about it that could cause a negative. Maybe that's the headache that I would get if I stopped. Or maybe the negative is that I have to pay for it every day. I don't know. With a gym thing, if you're addicted to going to the gym, I guess I would just ask, what are the negative? Are there any negatives about it? So are you spending less time with your family because you feel like you need to go to the gym 6 hours a day? That would be maybe causing some negative consequences, negative things in your life happening, right? You have an addiction. Well, there we might say you have a problem. What's your problem? You spend too long in the gym. You should work out an hour a day, and you need to make sure you balance your lifestyle, right? Some people, they get addicted to having a absolutely perfect giant muscular body, and that I think sometimes could compromise your health if you start pumping chemicals into your body, or maybe you don't eat a balanced diet as a result. So there might be negatives, but yeah, I think it could be potentially. Exercise, going to the gym in particular. I know some people who maybe they go to the gym too much. I don't go to the gym enough. I don't like the gym. And the reason I don't like the gym is because it smells weird. I feel like gyms smell like other people's sweat, and it's kind of gross. My favorite way to exercise is to walk. Bicycling is nice too. I like to be outside, see trees going by. That's nice. But I really like walking because I can listen to an audiobook. I walk fairly quickly. I went on a walk today, and that was great. I was listening to Zhuangzi. He was a Chinese philosopher, and I'm listening to that on a walk on this beautiful trail that used to be a railway surrounded by trees, right? So it's like you're in a tunnel of trees, but this trail is beautifully paved. It's not a dirt trail. It's very well kept, and no cars allowed. So you have some bicycles, some people on rollerblades, and people walking and running. So it's fantastic, and it's really long. So I love that as part of my day to go on a walk on the rail trail, listen to a book, maybe listen to some philosophy, think about stuff, come home and work. It's great. I realize it's not as intense as running or going to the gym to lift weights, but I don't. First of all, I don't want to have giant muscles. That is not. I never ever in my life. I don't think it looks cool. I don't like it. It doesn't fit with who I think I am. If I looked in the mirror and saw myself with gigantic muscles, it would be really weird. I would say, who is this person? And running, I feel, is hard to concentrate on a book, so I like to balance it with a book that I'm listening to, an audiobook. And running is fine, but I can't concentrate on the book as well if I'm running, I find. Is cryptocurrency an addiction? I don't know about that. That's an interesting one. Is cryptocurrency an addiction? Well, if you lose all your money because you can't stop trading sh- trading Luna coin, then yeah, maybe so. I don't know. I don't know. I think, just it's good to think about the things in your life that you can't stop doing, which are causing you problems. If they're not causing you problems, then maybe it's fine. I think we all have some kind of addiction. Um, but Zhuangzi is very interesting. So he was, and it's not even clear that it is a he. It's just a name that's applied to a past personality who may or may not be several people, and it may be that the Zhuangzi, the book, was written by a few people, maybe a particular personality, and then his students afterward. Maybe same thing with Lao Tzu. He is probably several people, and they're not sure. But you can analyze the writing style and guess, right, if a text was written by one person or a group of people. Sometimes they will associate one name. But the thing I like about Zhuangzi is he was not a Confucian. So Confucius is the guy that everybody knows as the sort of the rule maker, follow the rules, follow ceremony, who set a lot of norms and cultural ideas that really stuck in Chinese culture and spread right throughout the culture and became fixed norms. Filial piety, respect your parents, listen to your elders, the importance of education. If you're walking with three people walking together, one must be a teacher, something like that. There are a lot of Confucius had a lot of expressions that were meant to sort of convey tradition and wisdom via following the wise ideas of the past, right? So he had this picture in his mind of this guy named the Duke of Zhou who had everything right, and he thought he was living in a kind of corrupt age, and he wished to be a senior politician or an advisor in the government, but he actually never got the position that he thought he deserved because he thought he could really revolutionize politics and make the kingdom run better, right? And he looked back to this time when the Duke of Zhou, who was an embodiment of virtues, carried himself well and did everything right. So that's the sort of the tradition guy. And then Zhuangzi is opposite in a lot of ways. He's kind of a free thinker, and he is a bit of a Taoist, which is following the Tao, which is this sort of mysterious force called, or thing that is in the world that is known as the way, right? And it's not clear what it is exactly, and to try to define it very clearly is against what it is. To say, oh, it's this, then you can put it in a little bottle and say, oh, that's the Tao. The Tao is sort of fuzzy and not so clear. So he gives a lot of examples of what it is and how to live without telling you how to live. Often stories, anecdotes. A famous story is the story of a butcher. I think his name is Butcher Ding. And Butcher Ding, he's asked by a king, how is it that you are able to cut the meat of this cow so well? You're like a master artist with this. And he said a lot of other butchers, their knives are dull and they have to replace them and sharpen them. I have, in the 20-something years that I've been doing this, never had to sharpen my knives because I know exactly how to cut up the cow. Not because I follow a rule book, but because in every situation, everything is different. I follow the muscle and where the joints are. I adapt myself to each individual situation. And that's his rule, is don't say, I'm going to be this way. This is always good. When you find yourself in a situation, always adapt yourself to it and find the best path so that the knife slides naturally through the meat, and then people look at what you're doing and say, wow, how do you do that? That's so natural and effortless. That's a good example. He has a lot of kind of interesting stories. The other one I like is there's a guy who he has a dream, and he's telling, I believe he's telling his friend about the dream, and he says he dreamed he was a butterfly. And then when he woke up, he wondered if he had dreamed he was a butterfly, or on waking up, wondered if actually now he was a butterfly dreaming that he was a man, which is a good one as well. He's kind of just never says this is right, this is wrong. Very organic, very changeable, very natural, very sort of uncertain. He'll say something and then say maybe or maybe not. I don't know. Which I think is pretty cool. I like it. Juan Hernandez says, nice to see you. Could you explain when we can use "you've got this" in the bag? I appreciate your teaching. Yeah, great question, Juan. That's awesome. Could you explain when we can use "you've got this" in the bag? Okay. So often expressions, it can be helpful to know why they mean what they mean, but sometimes that can actually distract you, right? Let's just say "you've got this in the bag" or "I've got this in the bag" is a way to encourage others, or possibly to encourage yourself, to say that you will succeed. And it's not that it will be easy, but that it's definitely going to be what happens, right? If someone says, "I've got this in the bag," generally, we might think, oh, does that mean you're overconfident? You think you're going to win very easily? Well, it could be that, but usually it means I believe in myself. I think that I can do this, right? So let's do a quick example, okay? Let's say you are competing against 5 other people for a position, right? And you know that they're very experienced, but so are you. And you interview for the role. You know they're interviewing for the role. And after your first interview, you get a call back, and you have a second one. Maybe you have a third one. Some companies interview 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? After a few, you feel really confident that you're going to get the position, even though you know you're competing with other people, because of the interactions you've had with people in the company, the hiring manager, because of how you've answered questions in the interview process. You feel really good about it. And so you say to yourself, or maybe a friend, "Hey, how's the interview process going? I've got this job in the bag. I think I've got it in the bag." Great, that's fantastic. But what makes you so sure? They seem to really like me during the interviews. I think I'm really well qualified for the position. They keep asking me to come back, and each time I feel more confident that I'm the right person for the job. So I think I've got this in the bag. What is this in the bag? It is getting the job. Again, even though I'm competing with other people for the position. So you're giving yourself some encouragement. And again, as I said, you could potentially, possibly, maybe use that for overconfidence. I've got it in the bag. I have nothing to worry about. And then you don't get it. Oh, no, you were overconfident, right? But I think 90% of the time it's to encourage. To say that to others, "you've got this in the bag," would be when you see your friend losing confidence and you want to encourage them, even when you have actually no idea. You don't have to actually be confident that they're going to get it to say it. Because when you say it to others, you're trying to inspire them and give them a boost, right? Give them a bit of confidence. "You've got this in the bag. You can do it." Or maybe not. I don't know. You don't have to actually believe it to say it. The expression is to say, You can do it. I believe in you. I think you're going to succeed when you know they need to hear that. So that's what it means. I guess it's about feeling like I don't have it yet, but I will have it, and once I have it, I can put it in my bag. Maybe. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I don't think it really matters because we really should focus on the usage, how it's used, and what it really means. So hopefully that answers your question, Juan. It's a good one. Yeah, I think I've got the answer to that in the bag. All right. Good question. Good question. Similar situation. 10 years ago, I got the job. You chose the perfect example. Oh, great. Great. Yep. That would be a common situation to use it. But you could use it for so many other things too. You could, sports competitions or little things, taking care of your kids, anytime that there's a chance where you can fail or succeed and you're about to do it, that's when you might use that expression. So, common idiom, very common. Okay. Let's get back to stuff. I do want to talk about a phrasal verb. Looks like we have more people joining. That's great. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. We're here talking about, well, it's an English class, so we're talking about some idioms, phrases. But if you have questions about word differences, grammar, punctuation, pronunciation, or whatever, just ask. If this is something you're watching later, we do these every Wednesday and Friday around 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you can also check out my other videos. If you don't have time to watch these, but you want to see the little sections cut up, I do have someone doing that on another channel, which is recommended in the recommended channels, so you can check that out too. And what else? Feel free to check out the courses as well. As I mentioned, I have a free course that's in the link in the description, and you can check out my other courses as well. I just launched a travel course, which I'm very excited about, and if you want to learn about travel English, that's definitely one to check out. It's 12 hours long, but it's very intensive and covers virtually every travel situation that you could possibly think of. Okay. Alexander, not you've got this in the bed. In the bag is correct. In the bag, not the bed. I don't know what it would mean to say in the bed. Correct pronunciation of this word would be misinterpretation. 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 It's important when you're learning word pronunciations to know where the stressed and unstressed syllables are, right? So often if you have a prefix in front of a word, like d and un and miss, often that's going to be stressed. It's not a 100% rule, but often a prefix like that is going to be stressed. So miss will be stressed. But then for the word interpretation, which is a word by itself, when you listen to it, you have to try to catch the different ups and downs, which would be the stress on each syllable. So how many syllables is in the word? Interpretation. Interpretation. But then you would add one for miss. So miss, interpretation. And when you're saying that, or when you're listening to it, where are the sounds that go down, or are unstressed? Often, what makes a word sound natural is that it's stressed correctly, right? And an unnatural word pronunciation will be stressed incorrectly. So interpretation. Do you hear that? It's so short. It's barely there. It's not actually like the letter that's there. It's not interpretation. It's interpretation. That is called a schwa sound, S-C-H-W-A. The schwa sound is when you have an unstressed syllable inside of a word, and it sounds like it doesn't sound like any particular letter. It's called a schwa sound. So the there would be the schwa in that word. Almost, well, I don't want to say almost all, a lot of words that have two or more syllables have a schwa sound inside of them. Particularly 3 or more syllables in a word have a schwa sound somewhere in them, and you just have to listen out for them, okay? So, misinterpretation. Hi, Luke. Is there any difference between change of something, change in something, and change to something? How do you decide which preposition to use? Ooh, that's a good one. So before we get to the phrasal verb, maybe I can answer this question. It's a good one. Let me think for a second, though, please. Okay, I think I can answer this. It's a little tough with the first two, but I'll do my best. Is there any difference between change of, change in, and change to? How do you decide which preposition to use? And I would say before you even decide which preposition to use, you have to know which patterns are used in some situations, right? So we'll talk about each of these, but there are times when it could be, according to the grammar, one or the other. And often for especially change of and change in, they're very similar. The grammar is very similar, so there's not a specific reason in the grammar why it would be one or the other. But because it just is the way it is, sometimes you have to go with one or another. Perfect example would be a change of heart. The expression a change of heart just means you had a viewpoint or an opinion before, or you believed something before, and then you changed, right? So you were for the war, and now you're against the war. Whatever war, I don't know. I don't know what war I'm talking about, but any war, okay? So if you had that change, you had a change of heart. He used to be very liberal, and now he's quite conservative. He had a change of heart. Usually it's for quite serious opinions or sincere, strongly held opinions or beliefs. That's just the way the expression goes. I don't think there's any reason why it couldn't be change in heart. I don't know. But change of heart, that's what it is, right? So that's, I think, something that's just important to keep in mind. But let's explore these kind of individually. So change of, and I'll use heart, a change in plans, and a change to, let's go with change to, a change to next week. Okay. All right. So if we say a change of something, this thing is being swapped out for something else, right? So this heart is, in the expression, your strongly held opinion, right? So if you have a change of heart, this one is leaving, and you're getting a new one that's being that's replacing it. So it's a change of heart, right? Sometimes a change of mind. Sometimes change of view. We could say that as well. Often these are for softer things like opinions, like beliefs. It's very common to use for that. Whereas in, right, would be about common everyday things, a change in plans, a change in the agenda, a change in climate. So this is probably going to be more common and used for more different types of things. And we're not really saying that it's being replaced by something else. For change of heart, change of mind, right? Change of beliefs. I know I'm using that sort of common theme there, but something is being swapped out for something else. Whereas change in, this is not necessarily being swapped out or replaced completely. It may just be an adjustment. So if we say a change in the agenda, maybe the agenda for a conference, right? And you have speaker A, speaker B, and speaker C, and speaker B changes. So now it's speaker A, speaker D, and speaker C. Okay. All right, so there's a small change there. So a change in plans would be, instead of going to Berlin, we go to another city. And so we had a plan, and we do a different plan. It's more fuzzy. It doesn't have to be a clean thing that's replaced usually, right? Or maybe these speakers are still speaking, but instead of this being 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and 3 p.m., now it's 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and 3 p.m. So just a small adjustment there. And again, used for more different kinds of things. So I think this change in something is the most common. And often it is about schedules, it's about plans, it's about the calendar, it's about the day, it's about the time, that sort of thing. Now, change to would be about decisions moving from one thing to another thing, right? So let's say we're deciding what food to eat, and someone says, "Okay, I want to get Thai tonight." Ooh, that sounds great. Everyone agrees, right? Except then we're on the way, and someone says, "You know what? I don't want to have Thai. I think I'd rather have maybe Indian." And they might say that too. "You know what? I want to change my vote to Indian. I've decided to change to Indian." That doesn't mean become an Indian person, but change to Indian means change my preference there, right? Okay, well, we've gone from this to that. And the emphasis there is on the movement from one thing to another, often within one category. In this case, the category would be cuisine. Right? I've decided to change to Indian. Oh, okay. Well, there's a place we could go. No. So we go somewhere else, perhaps. Or we say, okay, well, that's just your opinion. We all still want Thai. Sorry. You've been outvoted, mister. Right? Change to next week would be, we're doing the same thing, but we're just going to change when we do that thing. So there's usually a specific category that remains the same, and then within that category, something moves. Something changes. We change to that. So what are we talking about with change to next week? Maybe you had a golf. This happened to me recently. Not gold. Not gold. Golf. Maybe you had a golf outing planned with a friend. This happened to me. And then something comes up. There's a change, right? You can't make it this week. So you text your golf buddy, which is what I did exactly. And I said, I'm sorry, do you think we could change to next week? And I could say the day, but if we can decide that later, then maybe I'll just say change to next week. Then I'm just saying I want to go golfing still. I don't want to cancel, but I want to move the time. So can we change to next week? Yeah, that's fine. Which day? Same day is good. Also next Thursday. Okay, great. Thursday it is. We'll change to next week. So we're staying within the category of golfing. We're staying within the category of cuisine, but we're moving a key detail there, like when it happens or which cuisine, right? But the key thing, and I want to emphasize this, pay attention to common expressions you hear. I'm trying to give you a sense for where these might be slightly different and how they're generally used. But you can take the common expressions you hear as fixed in place, and you can't swap them out and then be saying the same thing. A change of heart would be a perfect example. You cannot say a change in heart or a change to heart or something. It loses its meaning. So the most important thing is to pay attention to the common patterns that you hear, the common expressions that you hear. Make sure you know what they mean, right? Figure out what they mean, but then use them as they are. And often, when you try to dig down into, okay, but why is it of instead of in? I want to know why. You're going to come up empty-handed with no answer to your question, because either there is no answer or there's an answer, but nobody knows what it is because it happened 130 years ago on a Tuesday between two people no one has ever heard about, and then it spread outward from there, right? So why, in my opinion, not so important. Sometimes you have to just say, oh, okay, that's how people say it. So it's a change of heart, not a change in heart. Well, hopefully that at least kind of answers your question, HJK6. If not, let me know and I'll try to provide more clarification. But if so, start using it. The best way to kind of lock it in is to work on your own examples, make a few sentences of each, look up more examples to get a better sense for it, and then you can start actually using it, hopefully, in your daily life. Oraz says, hello from Poland. Greetings. Corinne says, I always appreciate your explanations. So clear. Thank you, Corinne. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I had to think about that one longer than usual, though, because it's kind of a complicated question. Some things I simply cannot answer in this kind of setting, though, because it requires me to think of several examples. And thinking of those examples does take time, right? So some things just some things I think are unanswerable in a live setting, but many things are. Very good. Zero sugar, purple energy drink. Amazing. Okay. I have a topic planned. Can I talk about that, please? Jeez. Kathy, is that all right? Okay. One of the most complicated phrasal verbs is make up. Think about it. Or don't. It's so complicated because it means so many different things. As soon as you think of one meaning, then you realize, oh yeah, but it also means that, right? Maybe your first impression is, oh, makeup is about what you put on your face, right? Yeah, yes. But also it's about things that are not real that you just suddenly come up with. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. Oh. So while phrasal verbs often have several meanings, makeup has more. And we're not even going to talk about all of them. So we're going to go over a few of the most common meanings, a few of the most common ways to use the phrasal verb make up, right? We have some examples we're going to explore to talk about the different meanings. Why? Because we use examples to extract meaning rather than saying the meaning and then trying to make examples. Because meaning comes out of real usage, right? I don't need to explain this, do I? So let's just jump into it. We're going to jump into a few of the common ways that we use this fascinating phrasal verb, and then I want you to try to make your own examples. Okay, so here we go. If you ever get stuck during your talk, just make something up. The team was made up of creative people from around the world. Your makeup makes you look like a different person. Okay, so these three. Now, the first one, if you ever get stuck during your talk, maybe you're giving a presentation, talking in front of people, right? Like I'm doing right now with you. Maybe I have a plan, maybe I'm following a script, maybe I'm reading a speech, right? If I can't read something or my mind goes blank, then I'll just create something from the little creative room in my brain that is always writing ridiculous things, right? So I forgot what I was going to say, but then I say, and there was a day when I was a boy, and I was riding my little blue bicycle, and I was attacked by a raccoon, and the raccoon was wearing a little red hat, and he attacked me, and he took my shoes and carried them away into the bushes. Now, why am I telling you this story? Okay, so I just now made that up. I didn't plan to say it. I don't even know what it means or why I said it. I made it up, right? Now, this can be used playfully like a story to create an imagination, right? To invent a character. To make up an event that happened would be to say, haha, I made up a little story that will entertain you. Or it could be used in a very serious sense. For example, if someone makes up a fact that other people are relying on, it could cause a lot of problems. You mean you made that up? I just worked an entire day on what you told me, and you're saying you made it up. Oh, sorry. I thought you knew I made it up. Oh, so that could cause problems. Making stuff up is just reaching down into a fictional place and pulling it out of nowhere, right? Now, this is then totally different. The team was made up of creative people from around the world. So what's that? Well, that's like comprised of, okay? Now, could I say that the tree is made up of wood? What's the difference between saying the tree is made up of wood and the team is made up of people from around the world? Well, one is correct and one is not. The tree example would be not made up of, but made of. The tree is made of wood, right? This keyboard is made of aluminum. So what's the difference between made of and made up of? Made up of, and notice that it is followed by of, it has to be followed by of, would be when you have a bucket of different things combined together that make a larger whole. So you're talking about just the material of something, glass, aluminum, wood, right? What is it made of? But if you're talking about a thing like a team, and there are different people from different parts of the world, you have some people from China and a couple people from South America, a few from Canada, made up of. And you could say made of, but made up of is better in that case. Think of it as a grouping that is one unit that has different pieces, right? Different components, not just one material like a keyboard made of some regular material like aluminum. Okay. Your makeup makes you look like a different person. Okay. Now, makeup you'll see used in this way, right? The makeup of a culture. Well, the makeup of a culture would be all of the things that make up the culture. It's music, it's dance styles, it's cuisine, it's fashion, right? The culture is made up of many different fascinating aspects, right? And you would say then, as one word, the makeup of the culture. So there is that meaning. And when we say it that way, we're using makeup as a noun. The makeup, the makeup, the makeup. One word, the makeup of the culture, right? The makeup of a species, the makeup of a sustainable ecosystem. It is made up of those things. But your makeup also refers to cosmetics. So, a couple things here. When you see a phrasal verb written as one word, that is going to be its noun form or sometimes its adjective form. And it usually means that it can be written as two words, make up, right? I made up and went out, right? I made up, or I did my, no, not did my makeup would be one word. I made up and then went to the dinner party. That means putting on your makeup. How do you know it's this meaning and not this meaning? It's context. You know it from the situation. So that would be putting on cosmetics. So if a woman is doing that, perhaps putting on foundation and eyeliner and eyeshadow and contouring and all of that stuff, that long and complicated process, that would be doing makeup, or when I'm describing it, your makeup, my makeup, right? I used to have to use a bit of foundation before, but I stopped doing that. When I would make videos, because everyone used to say, Luke, you look like you haven't slept in years. Your eyes have dark eye bags under your eyes. Yeah, it's just what I look like, right? So I used to actually put foundation under my eyes to hide the dark bags under my eyes, and now I don't care. So I used to have to do my own makeup, and often people will say, do my makeup. Do my makeup. Okay, so is that it? There are 3? Ho, 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 no. Again, there are more than we're even going to talk about, but we actually have 3 more ways to use makeup. So here we go. I will make it up to you next year, I promise. After waking up from his coma, Nigel wanted to make up for lost time. Are they still fighting? They've usually made up by now. Okay, so how do we have 3 different meanings? This is the rabbit hole goes ever deeper, right? And again, there are even more than what we're talking about. Okay, I will make it up to you next year, I promise. Now, let's say, okay, let's say there's 2 people. They are a couple, and they have an anniversary coming up. Maybe their 10th wedding anniversary. Wow, that's important, right? And so what are you supposed to do in that situation? Maybe go out for a really nice meal and maybe buy gifts for each other. I don't know, whatever you want to do, I suppose. Well, what if one person completely forgot about their 10th wedding anniversary, and they made other plans, and on their 10th wedding anniversary, instead of going out for a nice meal, right, let's say the husband, okay, let's be honest, we know who it is, goes somewhere else with his friends. Oops, forgot. Oh, no. Obviously, that's going to cause some hurt feelings. Of course, forgot about your 10th wedding anniversary? What's wrong with you? Okay, so then the apology would be, so sorry, I meant to buy a gift and take you out for a wonderful meal. I completely forgot. It completely slipped my mind. I will make it up to you next year. So for the next year, I'm going to do even more. So when you make something up to someone, you owe them something. You feel you need to apologize. You're in their debt, right? You feel bad, and you're going to do more than they expect in order for them to either forgive you or not hate you anymore, right? I will make it up to you, I promise. Maybe someone missing their child's important school event because they had work, very important work thing to do. I'm sorry I missed your swimming competition. I promise I will make it up to you. I promise, okay? So you're kind of apologizing and saying, I will give back even more somehow. If I'm -5, I'm gonna make it +5 in the future, right? And we also use making up to talk about falling behind. So this is actually connected to this second one, although they're not exactly the same. After waking up from his coma, Nigel wanted to make up for lost time. So he feels like he's behind. Maybe he was in a coma for, this should be a small c coma. Maybe he was in a coma for 3 years, right? Just asleep. Well, he missed so many family events, and he missed professional things in his career, right? He or she, well, Nigel, he's okay, it's he. So how do you feel in that case? Well, everyone else is at this level, and because I was asleep for 3 years, I'm here. I should be here, but I'm here instead because I was asleep for 3 years. Well, I need to work extra hard in order to get here professionally. I need to spend a lot of time with my family to appreciate all of the time that I've missed and be part of their lives. I need to buy a bunch of tech so that I'm not have the latest thing. I don't know. All of those things that would be part of getting to where you would have been if you hadn't been in a coma would be making up for lost time. Anytime there's an absence or you've missed something for a period of time, you want to catch up to where you were. And catch up would be a common expression to use in that case too. So this one is catching up to where you should be as well. Make up for lost time is a very common expression that you hear, often related to parenting, but certainly not only for that situation. And again, that should be like that. Okay. All right. Now, what about this one? Again, there's a common sort of thread here, but it's still a bit different. Are they still fighting? They've usually made up by now. So this making up is usually specifically for relationships, people who have disagreements or fighting because somebody missed somebody's 10th anniversary, so they're fighting, a couple is fighting, and making up would be the process of reconciling, of apologizing and making sure everything's okay, and that sort of thing. They've usually made up by now would be someone who knows these two people who are fighting and knows that usually they're okay within a couple days, but they're still 2 weeks later still really angry at each other, and so they haven't made up yet. Wow, that's taking longer than usual. They've usually made up by now. So this is sort of reconcile, forgive, similar to that. It could be used for just friends or people who know each other, but there people would say, I'll make it up to you, something like that, right? Usually for this meaning, to just make up, they've made up. Usually that is for people in relationships, particularly couples. Okay, so that's how it's typically used. Again, this is not even every single possible way to use make up. This is one of those absolutely crazy phrasal verbs that has a bunch of different meanings and uses. The best way to really get these is to make your own examples. Pay attention when you hear make up out there. How is it being used, right? Write down how it's being used. Pay attention to the context. Make your own examples so that kind of gets burnt into your brain so that when you need it, it's right there and you can use it without even thinking about it. Okay. Karina says, long and complicated, it's not that hard. Okay, great. Awesome. I think it's a bit complicated. I don't know. Glad it's easy for you, though. That's fantastic. Nice to see you. My best teacher ever, Abdul Malik. Thank you so much. All right. You guys have any other questions about anything that we haven't covered today? If not, I think we're going to call it a day. I've got to get ready because, as I said, my father's visiting, so I need to get ready for that. I have a few things to take care of. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I appreciate all the questions. Hopefully I answered all of them. If not, we will be back next Wednesday at around 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Again, thank you for being here. I hope you have a great weekend. Be safe. Have fun. And I shall see you next week. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the courses as well. You can get a free course in the links in the description, and also check out my travel course. That one is, I think, a good one. If you're planning on traveling, it's a good way to get a sense for how to handle any travel situation. All right. See you guys next time. Bye-bye. Have a safe weekend.